I would just say a few pieces of like going back to like advice, and maybe this comes from my original love of the theater and just actors, is like pick up your costumes, like don't leave them on a heap on the floor. This is advice for like young.
Hang it up. Hang up.
Hang it up.
Always hang it up.
Always hang it up. Treat the crew as your like,
it's a team sport.
yeah, you're in the
I just want to, yes, exactly, Kathryn, because you could do the best performance of your life. And what happens if there's no camera on it, folks?
Yes.
Yeah. Just simple.
Longer than you are. And also the vibe, like it's just better. Like if you know that the intention from every department is just like there for you truly and not filled with any sort of like, the vibe is so much better when everybody is collectively has the intention of just wanting it to be good.
This is an audience of your fellow SAG-AFTRA actors, although anyone is welcome to watch, of course. So I also actually like to go back to the beginning and find out, how did you get your SAG card? What was the job that brought that valuable piece of paper? I think it's a piece of paper, maybe it's plastic.
It's plastic now.
Exactly.
Let's start with Uzo.
Okay, I got my SAG card working on Orange is the New Black. The 2013.
So doing it. Did you just think like getting your SAG card also came with SAG Awards? Because you started.
Yeah, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Not at all. I was just happy to be there, to be honest with you, to be doing the gig. You know, it's something I thought would be cool. Like, I think every actor is excited to get that trusty card. And it was just wild to me that I came on a show like that.
Wow. I had no idea. Brie, for you?
I think I was 7 or 8. I'd have to look and see. I was a little child. And I think what I got it from was a skit I did on Jay Leno called Malibu Mudslide Barbie, where I played with, it was like a fake Barbie commercial where I played with dolls and then like dumped a bunch of mud on it. And it ended up being like a recurring gig for me. They had me do these fake commercials. I think maybe I did like 12 of them or something. It was the best. It was the best. And they also they had on their dressing room doors, they would put your name in a star, like a little mini version of like Walk of Fame style. And I thought that that's what life was always going to be like. And it's not. That was the only time it's ever happened to me in my career. But it was like so quintessential. My name on the star and a little piece of cardboard. Oh, it was heaven.
They should bring out those commercials now. I feel like all of them.
Maybe, I don't know. Okay. I think there's some ones you would appreciate, like a Roadkill Easy Bake Oven. There was a lot of really incredible gems in there. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I've seen some of these, so I feel like maybe they brought them out one time when you were a guest or something.
Yeah, I think like one of them's come out, but there's so many. My mom has them on VHS somewhere. Don't worry, I'll get them.
Kathryn, for you?
I got it for a show called Crossing Jordan, which was which was my first. Yeah, so that was, and I remember I had just come out of grad school. I was swimming in debt. Like I had so much debt from undergrad and grad school, and I was so nervous about the fee. For some reason, of like the original fee for your SAG card, I was just like, oh God, this is so expensive. Like I didn't realize that it would cost that much. So I just remember like, all right, it's gotta be worth it. And then I was so, of course, I'm so proud. And I didn't even know there was such a thing as SAG Awards back then. I think that was like 2001. So yeah, had no idea, but so proud. And of course, didn't even realize the ways that it had protected me and all of my, fellow actors.
Bel, for you?
I'm trying to remember, and I'm really scared I'm going to get it wrong, because I think as a Brit, I think it's when you do your third SAG project, you become a member of the union. So I think it was this movie called White Boy Rick, which I shot in like 2016, I think, that Jan de Monge directed, I think, but that could be really wrong. So
You've been acting for a while. Yeah, because you've been acting for a while, but that was probably one of your first American movies.
Yeah. I think that was my second. My first American movie was a movie I shot in San Francisco, a little movie called Diary of a Teenage Girl.
So good.
Prior to that, I was just, bopping around England. I wasn't doing all glamorous American stuff before that. I was doing theatre in London. I was a member of Equity, which is also an amazing union.
I'm glad you brought up the glamour because you're all here today because you've been nominated by your peers for your work. But I would love to talk about how these roles and nominations came about, but also the side that's not so glamorous. I'd love to start with sort of breaking into the industry. Do you remember the jobs you took before you became a working actor? Were they in the industry or not? Anything you did to survive before whatever you sort of consider your big break? Go ahead, Kat.
I definitely remember first coming to New York after school, stuffing all of our stuff. I came with my then boyfriend, now hubby, coming with all of our stuff in a U-Haul, like staying in the Jane Street Hotel pre-Hedwig. Like it was just it was just one of those hotels where my mom was like, bring flip-flops because the standing water in the shower, like it was a community shower for every floor. And so we got out of there pretty fast and then wrote a legitimately bad check to get a 1-bedroom, like on the 5th floor that you could see the 59th Street Bridge from. And I remember it was really romantic because we were putting our records together, and Feeling Groovy is like I think the subtitle is the 59th Street Bridge song, which we were like, oh my God, it was the first time we had put our records together. And so my first job was in a hair salon. My cousin got me the job. I was the receptionist, clearly, because I couldn't do hair. But I remember handing out, like you would do mailings. There's a book that had all the agencies in it. Can't remember what it was called, but then I would do mailings of all your headshots with like your resume, which I would try to, beef up, and I would put on it, you've got to see this girl.
You put like your own little quotes on it, like as if
it's like as if it was someone being like, you've got to see her. And the one taker I got, which I should have known, was there was an agency in New Jersey who just sight unseen was like, you're in. And I was like, I got an agent. And then sent out for gigs like, go to this Dunkin' Donuts. We'll send you an apron and a tray, and you're going to stand outside and hand out like samples of our new bagels.
Oh, amazing.
So it was definitely like go to this Bloomingdale's and you're going to like wear a tie-dyed shirt and, sell Jerry Garcia ties. So it was definitely not the agency that I had thought. So it was a lot like, it was mostly like me standing in line with for the backstage, which was then a periodical, like a newspaper, and looking for those off Broadway productions and waiting in line to see if I could get those shows.
Who's for you?
Okay, so when I first moved to New York, my friend from college, shout out Mary Ellen Bingham, she got me a job working as a waitress at City Lobster and Crab Company on, if you guys know it, on 49th between 6 and 7.
Great theater place to go to.
Literally, yes. Literally. We get the matinee Wednesday crowd and the like 7 o'clock right before like half hour. And it was wild actually, because then when I got my first show like 3 blocks up, I used to walk, because I lived in Queens at the time. I would take the train to Rockefeller Center, and walk by the restaurant that I used to work at and be like, I used to like work here. You know what I mean? And I worked there forever. Like, you know, did what I needed to do. People were great. We would do like random competitions in the back, like set up like challenges to like, today we're all going to be French when like the customers come in, or like today we're all, you know, like random things to entertain ourselves like as we worked. So yeah, that was my first job when I moved to New York.
I love that. Just to keep it interesting, or
Yeah, absolutely.
I
We're all
work in that
actors.
restaurant. That must
Absolutely.
have been so fun.
Like they don't know us. They're
So fun.
you know, like
So fun.
like random things. We'd be like in the back by like the rolls. We'd be like, today all of us are from Mozambique, you know, like
That's so fun.
random. So random. Anyway,
great training too.
yeah.
Brie, as someone who got their SAG card when they were 7 or 8, I don't know if this applies to you, but maybe it does.
Oh, it definitely does. Don't you worry. Don't you worry. Work is not consistent as an actor, okay? I mean, I had like a solid amount of time where I was still living at home. Like I moved out when I was 18. I think I just turned 18. But even then it was like I was not stable as an actor. And I mean, listen, will I ever be? We're not sure. But like it's just it took a really long time. The one job that I did have for a couple years in my adult life was I was a DJ, which like I just played vinyl records, and don't get too excited. It was like at a bowling alley, but it actually would pay really well. And so I was doing that for a really long time because it would be in the evening. So I was still able to audition. And at that time, I mean, I don't know if that's still the case, but DJing paid so remarkably well. And it was like the novelty that I was like this young girl that had like, I only played vinyl records. And so I ended up doing like, I did some magazine parties, like Teen Vogue parties. I think I did like a Coachella party
Very
once.
cool.
So
It was really cool, but I was
Very
doing
cool.
that while I was filming Short Term 12. I was still doing that on Saturdays because I was so poor. And Short Term 12, I think it was like $800 a week or something. And even that was like 3 weeks of work. It wasn't like a huge thing. So I had to do that for a really long time. And it was kind of the best job for me. I taught a kids acting class like briefly, but that wasn't even for money. That was just so I could get acting lessons. I did like a trade with this acting coach because I didn't go to school. Like I'm not trained in any way. Like everything I just kind of made up. So it just kind of scrappy. But aside from not having like a consistent working job, I mean, I basically just was like the classic, be at the grocery store, swipe my card, and it'd be like $0. I mean, I probably did that like 12 times at least. There was so many times that I did that. And I was like, when is this gonna, it just feels impossible. It feels really, really impossible. And that's what I'll say. Outside of like having a job, not having a job, whatever, I just felt like, it always felt like I needed to have the job to have the job. And I was like, but if I don't have the job, how am I supposed to get the job? And it just felt like devastating and impossible all the time. So anybody out there who's feeling that, it's very real. It's very real.
This DJ job actually sounds really cool. I'm surprised you gave it up.
I know. Well, I think about it sometimes. It's like, maybe I'll just take my records out and I can go back to that if, you know, I need it in a pinch, because it seems like now you can send in self-tapes and people are way more, it's like digital now auditioning, but that's not what it was like. I feel like I'm sounding like it's from a time long ago, but it's not that long ago.
Totally.
But I mean, you have to drive everywhere. And so it'd be like having a bunch of different changes of clothes in your car and like getting parking tickets because, you know, the casting office was an hour behind, and then being in these cramped rooms and people are like,
Guide.
yeah, Thomas Guide. Yes, Thomas Guide. And like
What's that?
people like doing like the lines of dialogue kind of like mumbling to themselves and like kind of staring past you in the waiting room and like trying to stay focused. It's just it was so hard. And so now I feel like you have the flexibility, it seems like, to have a more regular job. But when I was doing it, it was like, it was one or the other. Like you couldn't do 3 auditions in a day and also have a job. So the DJ stuff helped me quite a bit in that sense.
Does someone want to explain the Thomas Guide to Bel?
Yes.
Oh, it was huge back in the day.
It was like a guide to LA, like of maps. So before
Like a book of maps.
Yeah, we have that. It's called the A to Z.
A to Z. Nice.
Yeah, the A
it was so stressful because you would have to kind of plot out your whatever,
Turn to
map.
page 46, column A.
Yeah, there's like all the little blocks,
Yeah,
these
and
little
find where you're
squares.
going.
You have to find it, and then like, oh, I have a terrible sense of
Before
direction.
you
to
went
those-
anywhere, you would have to like write down from the Thomas guide, like take left here, take a right here, get off at this thing, da-da-da-da. So it was, yeah, not as we're that is one good thing about technology. I'll say that is.
Well, then I remember. Do you remember the MapQuest era? Because then I
MapQuest.
moved on to that.
yes.
Yeah, and you had to like print it
MapQuest.
out, and the printer would never work. And then it was like, oh no, and heaven forbid you've like left the house with your layers of MapQuest, and then it's like, oh no, that freeway's closed. And I'd be like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Oh,
I don't know how to
right,
get anywhere.
MapQuest.
MapQuest
Yes.
is huge.
You had to
MapQuest
print it
is huge.
out.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to print it out and have all the directions.
And
for you.
also know like distances on your own. You was like,
Oh,
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. That's like,
Like-
I know what that is.
it's like, I don't know, is this 2
0.7.
miles? I don't know. Like,
I just have to say, Brie, that I remember being at that Gotham Awards. We were both there, and I remember you winning for Short Term 12, and I just want to like cry thinking about it after just hearing your story talking about the experience of Short Term 12 and how close that was to you just like being at the beginning of it. And it just feels like I was able to witness this major shift for you. And anyway, that was such a beautiful, there's just such a beautiful new chapter. I feel like I got to wit, or the start of a new chapter.
Yes. Well, you did, and it's like you don't. That's so sweet. I forgot about that. I forgot that you were there for that.
Oh my God, I was
It was so
excited for
special,
you.
and it was
So
like that
special.
dress that I had was like Calvin Klein randomly was like, oh, we'll dress you, and they had like one dress that they sent, and I don't even know if it fit, but it's just like it was
Oh,
clothes,
it
you
fit.
know. And I wore that, you know, and it was like, I remember I had a zit and I just kept putting too much stuff on it and I like burnt my skin and had like a dry patch. But it was just like, whatever. I didn't know what I was doing at all.
Oh my God,
But,
you're
like,
amazing. And then
like-
we all met up at some random bar afterwards.
Yes.
And chill. And you're
Yes.
just your energy was so awesome about it. I was very excited. And then that, just your performance in that movie was just so beautiful. So yeah. Very
Thank you.
exciting.
I feel like that stuff too, when I look back on that, it's like those are, because I've been feeling it recently now that like it's new year, whatever. I've been having this feeling of like, I feel like hungry to do something great. Like I feel hungry to work. And it's like that feeling is the exact same feeling I had at that time. And
Yeah.
I'll take long breaks from work so that I can get to the point where I feel that again, because that's where I feel like all that stuff comes from. Was like, I was so charged at that time and I don't want to lose that charge. Wait, Belle, you didn't say your part about.
Yeah, Belle's going to tell us how it's
I
going
want to
and
know
not
about your
ending.
jobs.
I was just thinking it's not nearly as glamorous as be cool as being a DJ. Kind of similar to you, Brie, actually. Like I started acting as a kid. So I was in like kids' TV shows when I was like, not 7, when I was like 13, 14. But I still finished high school. And my parents really like, they had high hopes for me. They thought I was like going to go to university and do something smart. So when I told them that I wasn't going to go a history degree and I was actually going to try and be an actor instead, they were really quite pissed off about it. So I moved out and I moved to a different part of London and I was like going to try and be an actor. So kind of similarly to you, like when I was working, but I was doing theatre, so like I wasn't earning any money. And then when I wasn't working, I would get other jobs. There was one quite fun one. My friend like owned a bakery kind of cafe thing. So I like get up at 4 a.m. and go to the bakery and we like bake cakes in the morning, and that was really great. I worked in a pub for a bit. I was the worst waitress. I couldn't pull a pint. So bad, like poured wine on people. And I got a job. I remember I got a job. It was a Hallmark movie, which I thought was really glad.
What can I see this? I want to watch this immediately.
I'm never uttering the name. Will never leave my.
That's what IMDb is for.
But,
Okay? I'm on it.
I was like, cool, I've got a movie, wow. I was too embarrassed to go to the pub and tell them that I was actually leaving to like go and do a film. So I like never actually went and collected my wages. So I basically just worked there for like 3 weeks for free.
Amazing.
So I did, that was really weird of me. And then those are like the main teacher. And then I got then I got Arcadia on Broadway, and that was when I was like, going
Who is
to
in that cast? It's incredible cast.
it was Billy Crudup
Mm.
and Grace Gummer and Raul Esparza and
Amazing.
yeah, and David Laveau
What a
directed.
play.
It was
What
honestly
a
one of
play.
the best experiences of my life. I was like 19. My mum was like,
Amazing.
bye. And I just like moved to New York.
Oh,
I remember I was living in, it was 42nd between 8th and 9th or something. And it was like, now if I moved to New York, I would not want to stay there because obviously quite cool, right? To live in Midtown. But at the time I was like, whoa. And I was really, it was like the 42nd floor. And I could like see a tiny bit of the Statue of Liberty from my window. It was just like the most exciting time of my entire life. And after that there was like, I probably didn't work for like 2 years, and anyway, but that was a big deal for me.
oh my God.
Oh my God, I know that vibe.
It was so fun.
How long after Arcadia did you book Diary of a Teenage Girl?
Yeah.
Probably like 2.5 years. So
Really?
I got picked up by UTA from Arcadia. So I didn't have an American agent then. And that's when I signed with UTA. And then I did like 2.5 years of like pilot season tapes, like not booking anything, being like, they're just definitely gonna fire me. And then or drop me or whatever you call it. And then and then I booked Diary of a Teenage Girl.
Oh.
And here we are now. You all gave great performances and really challenging roles. And it's interesting because I was thinking about how most of the work you're nominated for is set kind of in the past, and yet it all feels so much timelier than ever. Belle, in A Small Light, you play Meet Geese, the woman who hid Anne Frank and her family. I'm so curious, what did you know or think you knew about this woman prior to this project? Because I'm embarrassed. I'd never heard her name.
Yeah, no, God's honest truth, I didn't really know her either. Like I didn't know her name. I've read the diary like in school, as you know, part of my education, as most people have. And obviously I'm very clued up on this part of history. Like I'm Jewish myself, but I didn't know anything about me. I was astounded to find out about this kind of everyday hero that I think there are a lot of female heroes in history that are suddenly coming out of the woodwork now in the last few years. Now that times are changing and people are more interested in telling kind of these women's stories. Yeah, so yeah, I didn't know about her.
You've played a real person before, but I don't know if when you look at a character like this, if you approach it as, since people didn't really know who she was, you don't feel obligated to mimic a voice or a look, but
Yeah.
the preparation?
Yeah, I mean, I've played, like, I guess, like Diary of a Teenage Girl, like that's based on a real person, but it was like a comic book, and so yeah. And I played Claire Claremont in a movie about Mary Shelley, but obviously that's like really, really old times, so like she can't like come for me, can she? But with me, like it did feel like a big responsibility because of the period it's about, and also the fact that it was kind of the first time I felt like she was being introduced to the world. But like there's not that much like video footage and stuff out about. I mean, yeah, she was just like an ordinary person. But she wrote her own kind of biography of like her own account of the events that happened like in the 80s. So and it's called Anne Frank Remembered. I found that really useful because you can really kind of get a sense of her voice through it. And I read like a lot of manuscripts of interviews that she did like later on in her life with her husband. And I also just went to Amsterdam, kind of just like I like cycled. I like got her cycle routes, like her route that she cycled to work. And I feel like Amsterdam has such like a specific feel to it. It's a city built on waterways, and I don't know. So yeah, there were little things that I did to kind of feel like I was embodying her, but I also, yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about playing real people?
Well, Kathryn,
Terrifying.
Kathryn has
Yeah.
this really unique character because in Tiny Beautiful Things, it's inspired by Cheryl Strayed, and things are taken from her life to create a character of Claire, but Cheryl's actually there on set with you. Did you feel like you were playing her?
It was like, Cheryl has been played before, basically by Reese in Wild, and beautifully. And so I think we knew going into this, like Tiny Beautiful Things is based on her collection of basically advice, I would say, to simplify it, an advice column that she had written under the name Sugar. So it was called Dear Sugar. And these letters are her responses in these letters are so raw. So the adaptation was to try to find a way into the person behind this sugar. And we knew that there are parts of Cheryl's life that were, of course, going to be in it, but it really was the person written on the page that Liz Tigelaar had written. To me, it's always like what the script is the Bible. And like, whenever I start to go outside of that, it just doesn't, it kind of feels sloppy. So that was all in there for me for this particular person. And so having Cheryl there was, of course, nothing but a gift, because her presence is so warm and generous, and she's just so excited. And she wasn't there all the time, but this very much felt like this own bird. And the material, like, it was much harder than I thought it was going to be, because it really cut close to the bone. It was one of those parts, I'm sure everyone has been able to feel this, that is like the right time or wrong time, like whatever, but like the time, like that time in your life that it just, it's like just happens to coincide where you're like, oh, wow. It's just like, it just gets, it's right on the bone. So you just are, it's just a very like hard, interesting place to ride. So it was, so in terms of playing, and that's exactly where, interestingly, Cheryl shares her life. And so that was just, I guess that was where we connected in that. So it wasn't like the specific, I guess, sorry, this is so long-winded, but I guess the specifics of Cheryl were in the younger version of me that felt more close to her life, played by the amazing Sarah Pidgeon. So that, and in the mom that I had lost, played by Merritt Weaver. So like that kind of felt the closest.
Uzo, correct me if I'm wrong, but in Painkiller, Edie Flowers is not necessarily a real person, but I assume she's based on, some amalgamation of the prosecutors who sought justice for the families affected by the opioid crisis. I have to imagine, being such a timely and true story, so much research went into this part.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're totally right. She's not a real person. Edie Flowers, she's not a real person. She's a composite of a lot of the people who were involved in exposing the opioid crisis, and specifically the Sackler family. And the show itself is based on a book. So there was that. And then there's just like immense amount of research as far as because to your point, you said it already, it's so timely. This is current history that we're looking at, or recent history rather, from articles, Time articles, Newsweek articles, to pieces in 2020 specials, and all of this you could watch. So really, for myself and a lot of us working on the project, it was about tapping into these real lives. I think this is separate from my own part. I thought something that our producer, Eric, had told me he had done with Pete Berg, our director, they put these confessionals at the top with real families who had lost someone and were truly impacted by this horrible epidemic, and sort of the impact statements that they never got to give, never got to have when Purdue Pharma was sued, to sort of hold a light, shine a light on the lives of the families and the people who are victims of this horrific abuse. And I think that was really where the work was rooted supremely, was the opportunity to sort of spotlight and hopefully affect those who were watching to understand how something so, I don't even know the language for it, so obviously obtuse. We were trying our very best to try and give an opportunity for those, or I at least felt for myself, trying very best to give an opportunity to let for those people and those individuals who oftentimes were quite vulnerable, to have their stories exposed and told and seen, because it so obviously had not been done at the time when it was happening. And so collecting all of these very obvious opportunities that many, many people had created for this to be stopped, that they were able to, Micah and Noah, our writers, create a woman who was able to have that voice. So that was very important to me.
How did you get just the legalese down? I mean, walking and talking like a prosecutor, were there people you could turn to for help on that?
Yes. Well, yeah, and it was important because at the time when we were shooting, our writers were real, and we had on set our writers, of course, and someone from legal, I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but who, because at the time, if you all recall, there was a suit, this was happening, like this actual suit that landed where Purdue Pharma was hit with these like billions of dollars. That was happening. This was like the lawsuit itself was actually happening, even though the show is highlighting when they were being exposed. So because to not impact the case, or to not negatively affect, we had to be really precise with our words.
Wow.
Because that could potentially have some kind of real life effect. So yeah, we had to be, there were certain words, even if whatever I'm saying right now doesn't matter, because I Uzo am speaking, but the language that we had to use within the script itself was very, very precise. Even if I said like buy the drug instead of like for the drug, they'd be like, you actually have to say, like this legally, that you have to say this specifically right here, because the language of the law mattered. It really did matter. But being able to find that for myself, I think that helped to impact for sure the character. Edie, and the real life investigators who unfolded this, she's so detail oriented. Everything about her, it's those little specifics that were what exposed the Sacklers and exposed the opioid, and the size with which they were selling these drugs and prescribing these drugs. That was definitely in the writing with Noah and Micah. You could feel that she paid attention to everything. She didn't miss a beat. She's a character who doesn't miss a beat. She doesn't miss anything. She sees everything. And so that was what helped to really nourish the way I approached it, I think.
I love all these brilliant women you all portray. Brie, Elizabeth Zott in Lessons in Chemistry is so many things: scientist, mother, cooking show host, and so ahead of her time. And this show is set before you were even born.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware.
I'm kind of curious how you prepared for the project, and how much was Bonnie Garmus's book a resource for you, or is it more you sort of read it and put it away?
Oh no, the book was kind of everything, really. I think it was a rare time though where Elizabeth was just really clear to me. Like, I don't remember needing to like figure her out or figure it out. It was like even from just the beginning of reading the book, I just remember I hadn't even finished it. And I was like, sent an email being like, I'm in, I want to do this. And I just knew who she was. And then it was like, I got to explore it through the actual producing part of it, of developing the scripts, of selling the show, of needing to pitch it out, of doing all of those things. I think it was not my normal process, but it ended up being a really healthy process. And then when it got closer to filming, it was more about, it was weird. It's like trying to find all the things that make her. And I didn't want to look at anybody who, some people have asked me about like Julia Child and stuff. I never watched anything of hers because Elizabeth wouldn't know about her. So there's no counterpoint. So there's no reason to go there. So I just didn't want to be influenced by that at all. So the thing that became the biggest resource to me was honestly YouTube. YouTube and Reddit have always been like a huge part of my process. I don't know. But on YouTube, I could find the tricky part about doing something in a different time period is that a lot of the times things that you think of are films or television shows, but I would argue like, is that actually how people were talking and looking? I can't say that if I looked at TV now, I'd be like, oh, that's the pulse of what's happening now. You know, it's a shade of it. It's an exaggerated version of it. And so I wanted to know, how do people talk? How do they wear their hair? All of these things so that I understood what would make her different. What was she seeing? And how is that the counterpoint to her? So I ended up finding some amazing interviews. Not all of them were from the States. Some of them were like Australia or UK, whatever. But they were just people interviewing people on the street. I don't know why people were doing this, but I'm so grateful to them because they were just random stuff. And then I found some incredible videos of some scientists in particular at that time that were doing like, you know, filming themselves doing experiments, because it's the quiet moments, like the moment when she realizes that she's made a discovery, that I just was like, I don't even know. For the longest time, I felt like, oh, I don't even know how to place that. I don't know. Do I go like Eureka, or like, I watched a video where one guy was like, Mamma Mia. And I was like, is it that? Like, what am I supposed to do? I don't know. Or is it just kind of like, or, you know, or is like a scientist actually, when they're alone, they just go like, I've done it. You know, like, I don't know. And so that was the thing that I stressed the most about, honestly, was what is it like to be at work as a scientist? And what is it like to make a discovery as a scientist? And it was, there was a moment, it was like 2 days into filming or something. And we were like waiting for the camera to move, and we had been doing this scene, and there was something about it that wasn't quite working. And I kept saying like, something's not right. And I was like, I don't know what the deal is. I was like, something is not fitting right. And I started going through my scripts, and I was kind of staring off, and then something clicked, and I realized that there was a timeline error, and I was talking about something that was in the wrong spot. And it just hit me. And I like, before I even realized it, my feet were walking and I was down the way, and I was like, this is the thing. Like, I caught something or whatever. And when I came back, Lewis had watched the whole thing, and he was like, that's it. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, that's exactly what we've been trying to figure out. You sitting there staring off, that's a scientist thinking about these equations, you going, oh, like, that was it. And I was like, oh my God, of course. Like, the big joke being that, oh, being a scientist is so different than me. And trust me, it definitely is. I wouldn't know how to do any of these things without our consultants. But the mental process of it and how I wanted to depict it was much more close to the human that I live with at all times than I had realized. And it gave me this freedom that I was like, anytime I have to do a scene where I'm sitting there writing in my notebook or whatever, I'm just going to think about all the things as a producer that I have to do. I'm going to think about like all of the editing I have to do later and all this stuff. And I have this thing where I think that if I'm thinking about what I'm saying in a scene, or if I'm thinking about something else, then it makes my eyes, I think, more alive than just being static. So I want to have stuff running through my head as I'm doing any scene. And so it gave me natural checkpoints, natural ways of playing her. You know, who knows if any of the stuff worked, but it felt good.
I do wish you would have said Mamma Mia though when you had that.
We did joke about it, and you know that there actually might be footage of it. I'm not kidding. Yeah, because it was really a thing that we wanted to honor this like scientist that we had watched on YouTube that we just adored because we loved that reaction.
Mamma Mia.
Mamma Mia. Yeah,
I'm going to do that now when I have a eureka moment.
Yeah,
Mamma
I give
Mia.
that to you.
It's interesting because you referenced YouTube and Reddit, and with technology changing so rapidly, and also just things that I think you learn with age. For each of you, has your process changed much over the years? Is there like a specific piece of advice that's always worked for you? Like, find the character's hair and you'll find everything else. Or do you find it changed over the years? I just made that up. But if it works for you.
I always need a hard copy. I can't work.
Me too.
Yeah,
Me too.
I know it's maybe not as great for the environment, but even if they send me changes, I will write it into like, if it's not that many, but I need a tactile thing to write my notes in and to highlight and to like, I don't work with anybody in terms of like running lines. Like I've never had to. It's always been like a lot of people, I totally get it when people, but I just need that feeling. And I know some actors that like to practice stuff in mirrors, and
that's a thing.
I have heard.
I don't even want to get ready in the mirror in the morning. I purposely took myself away from the mirror. I don't want that much time looking at myself.
Me neither. I can't because I don't even look at playback because
me neither.
Same.
I can't.
That's like a one-way ticket to just getting really insecure is watching playback.
Yeah, like, because then I go right to like the
That's
vanity.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I just think it is not helpful for performance. Like it's not helpful for me because a lot of people want to see how they're coming across, and I just feel like someone else will take care of how I'm coming across. I just need to focus on what do I want? You know what I mean? I think we're all
truthful if you're feeling self-aware. That's how
That's
I
intention. If it feels, true. But that's like kind of cool to me that we're all on the same page on that. I love it.
Yeah, we don't work well together. There's gonna be no waiting to be like, oh, they're watching playback.
Listen,
it's like for some people, it is part of the process, and it's like amazing to me. I just like even having to do like 2 hours of hair and makeup in front of a mirror, I just feel like my face starts becoming something that I don't recognize anymore. And I'm like, I'm not supposed to look at this. And that's for the world. I don't need to be looking at that. It's not healthy. I don't need it. I will say that I had to edit myself for the whole show. And that's actually completely different to me and totally fine.
That's after the thing.
Because I always refer to her as her. Like she's this, she's that. And it's not, because then it allows everybody to be like critical of my performance in a way that's fair. That like no one has to be like, sorry, Brie, it's just like, it's just like, oh no, I'm not getting that from her. I'm not feeling that. Can we look at another take? Whatever.
100%.
So that for some reason feels fine because there's also a finality of like, this is the footage we have, it's done. There's no maneuvering. There's no going back. It just is what it is.
After the thing, you're not still in
I'm not in the thing.
Yeah.
I'm not in the thing. There was only one time I think that I looked at playback, and it was during room when I had to be like lying. And I realized that like, I was very confused about how to allow the audience to know that I was lying, but my kid is perceptive and would know if I was lying. And so playing that line was the only time I felt like I was watching it as like watching the chess match. But outside of that, outside of that, I don't know. I don't see that for me. But I don't think I have really any like techniques or anything. I think everything I just kind of made up on my own. I'm like, it's really embarrassing. Like, I don't actually know any of the acting techniques. I don't know what any of them do. I don't, I just didn't have that. And I'm sure they're great. It's nothing against that. It's just like, I just didn't do that. And then after Room, I felt like I was so sad after that movie was over. It was so hard for me to get out of character that since then it's been like my mission to just get really clean about getting in and out. So lesson in chemistry became like the best place for that, because everything's moving so fast and you're going through all these different time periods. It's like, oh, I'm in college and now it's Christmas 10 years later, and now it's here, and now I have a kid, and now I have the, and so you had to like bounce around, and I couldn't emotionally stick so much to anything. And it was like, I felt like the bittersweet thing of the show, which was the good times and the bad. No scene lasted very long, and I had to keep moving through it and live that kind of cycle of things. And then the main thing I've been practicing, which I'm not sure if I've shared before, and maybe this is going to sound bizarre, but I try my best, and I don't think I've done it since I've really refined this technique, but I don't cry out of sadness any longer. If I have to do a scene about something hard, I will look around the room and look at everybody and try and fill myself with as much gratitude and sense of presence, and I'll cry from a place of gratitude. And I've just found that to be a much cleaner way, because sometimes when you're in those scenes, your mind starts to go to a really dark place, and then everyone else has moved off that scene, but your mind is still stuck in it. And then you go home, and I've been like, there were certain things in my life that I was like, why am I still not over XYZ thing that happened in my past? And it was like, oh, because I keep using it to make myself cry on screen. And so I was like, what if I just let that go? And I know that I can do it that way. You know, if I ever need to, I can go back to that. But for now, it's actually been really lovely and makes me feel much more connected to the work, much more connected to people. And then I don't go home feeling like sad about something that happened in 1992, you know?
I'm curious about that, about Bel and Uzo, especially with these real life stories. Is it hard not to take your work home with you, you know, when you're doing these serious scenes and really putting your body through this every day?
Yeah. Yeah. It was because we filmed in Prague, and they literally built a exact replica of the annex that the Frank family lived in. Like the diamond, everything was exactly the same, and the offices. It was so when we would do blocks where we were just filming in there for like weeks on end, it did get pretty difficult. And it was like, I don't know, it's hard to explain. Like, I don't know if any of you have ever visited like Auschwitz or anything like that, but it's like I kind of got the same filming it, and I got the same similar feeling from when I visited Auschwitz. It's like when I visited, like you can't comprehend that this was actually real. And then when your brain goes like, it kind of like makes your brain like all mushy. Like I think because obviously like the human condition isn't meant to like that these things aren't meant to happen, these evil things. So I don't know. It was like a bit of a, for want of a better word, mind-boggling mess. But one thing, sorry,
I want to hear the other word.
Mind. But what I will say is that I found from making a show about such a dark time in history, it was one of the like closest casts and crew like I've ever worked with. And I don't think it was just because often you get that when you're on location, but I don't think it was just that. I think it was because the subject matter was so dark. I think everyone inherently just looked out for each other emotionally. And it doesn't mean like we weren't all talking about it all the time, but I think that, you know, I don't know, we all kind of like had each other's backs. It was not one of those shows where like during setups, like everyone went back to their trailer and like FaceTimed their boyfriend. It was like everyone was on set, everyone was like sitting, chatting all the time. Like and you know, on weekends, like I don't know, we went to karaoke and cooked each other dinner. And I just think that I think that that brought everyone together. I think we had to look after each other, because living in that world for 7 months is hard. It's really
That's hard.
Yeah.
And Uzo, for you, I mean, this, like you said, a lot of what you're portraying is still happening now. I don't think there's anyone whose life hasn't been touched to some degree by this epidemic.
1,000% accurate. Yeah, I was thinking about that question. I think it depends on the role and then the work that day of the role, how much of it comes home. There are some days and some scenes that can be rather intense, and you can have a lot that you're trying to convey, and that you emotionally share, that can make it really wild. But I appreciate, and I guess like to your previous question about what is some technique, I do I guess one of the things that I appreciate is the letting it go, is the work of letting it go, because it's like, for me, I still need to be a person in the world, and I still need to engage with people, and that engagement, to the best of my ability, should not be loaded, with whatever 95,000 things I have. It's like, if I can take one of those 95,000 things off the plate so that engagement is like solid with another human, I want and wish to do that. So I appreciate the work of trying to release and relieve, and having come into this side of acting on film and television with my other show, that became very important to me, because she was so loud, and it's like, I can't walk around with that much energy daily. So that became like a really important exercise. And with this project specifically, it is equally so, because there are so many people impacted by the opioid crisis. To carry that, my desire and want is, when I step into that space, to hold it, to be the container to hold it, and hold it, all of it, and be protective of it. And then it is important to then, when we call cut, to go into that trailer, and for me, do that release work, and to then leave it there, so that I can hold all of my own stuff well. I can hold myself well. So that is an equally as important exercise for me as the work that you see happening from whatever call time is to wrap. But also, I just want to switch gears really quickly and say that, Kathryn, I also agree with you on 10,000 with the tangible, physical, hard copy. I think that is also integral for me in even just the exercise of holding it. Like, once you're even off script, when you're off book, it's like, I even just have the pages in my hand, just to kind of like, the feeling of it helps. I don't even know what it's helping necessarily. I don't know if it's a blanket. I don't know if I don't know what it is.
Set every day, the whole thing, like I had to take it home. Right.
Right.
It becomes like, sometimes I put a crystal on it. Like, it just becomes my like,
Yes.
like my Bible for the thing.
Yes. And then when you're doing it, you totally don't need it. But when I'm in the preparing of it, I'm like, give me that script. I'm like, I need to hold that script.
I don't think I could. I mean, I don't do what you guys do, but I don't think I could ever be that person who, I see people taking notes on like an iPad with their script, and it just feels so ooh to me.
I wouldn't know how to do it.
I wouldn't know how either. Also, I like when you like write notes in your script, and then you might, if you're doing a long shoot, and then say you're like a few months in, and then you'll go back over them and like rediscover something, that like an idea that you had before that maybe you'd forgotten. Or something.
Like your gut instinct the first
Yeah.
time.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I'm reading a book right now that's a used book, and so I'm like reading somebody else's notes in the margins, and I absolutely love it. I'm like, it's giving me insight I never would have had. Yeah. Also, I saved a lot of money.
I would just say a few pieces of like, going back to like advice that maybe I think we could all like, and maybe this comes from my original love of the theater and just actors, is like, I always think like, and also maybe because I'm a Midwesterner, but like, pick up your costumes, like don't leave them on a heap on the floor. This is advice for like young.
Hang it up. Hang
it
up.
up.
Always hang it up.
Always hang it up. It's just like, that's what you do. It's so respectful.
That's right.
And treat the crew as you're like, you're in it together. Like, there's no hierarchy on a set.
Team sport. It's a team sport.
Yeah, you're in the
I just want to, yes, exactly, Kathryn, because you could do the best performance of your life. And what happens if there's no camera on it, folks?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just simple.
Longer than you are. Yes. So like if you're, and also the vibe, like it's just better. Like if you know that the intention from every department is just like there for you truly and not filled with any sort of like, you know, because I've been on those sets where some actors are just like, you know, whatever. And the vibe is so much better when everybody is collectively has the intention of just wanting it to be good. Like, you know, wanting to, you know, all be feeling it. And it's so much
Learn
better.
people's names, I would add to that. I know that's not easy for everybody. That can be hard, especially when for us, usually day one means you're meeting 100 people, but to the best of your ability. Because whenever there's a moment, if you're like, hey, could this get moved? Or like, this doesn't seem right. It's so much nicer, especially if you're like deep into a production, to not be like, hey, you, to actually be like, hey, so-and-so, I need some help with this. Like, it's just kind.
Totally agree.
1000%.
Oh, and I also started bringing games to set, and I feel like that was really, really helpful. Instead of like you were talking about, Belle, about having like everyone chatting and hanging, we would have all of our chairs out too, but I had a big pop-up like table and tent, and I would bring all kinds of games like Boggle, we played Spot It. A lot of them were like fast games if you're in between setups, but on a show where you constantly have new characters coming in, and it's like, I feel like I had this responsibility to be like the host, you know, and make actors feel comfortable, that having those games allowed us to warm up and have fun and play before we were playing together on camera. That didn't involve us being like, so where are you from? Like, it just immediately gets you intimate without needing to talk about like small talk all the time, which I'm just not very good at. So I just recommend that. It was just such a pleasurable way to get to know people.
Yeah. I love when people don't bring cell phones on set, because I don't.
Leave your phone in your trailer.
Leave it in the trailer. Like
definitely didn't do that,
your
guys.
trailer.
Sorry, I was producing.
I was gonna
at the
say-
same time. I'm sorry.
I know, I was gonna say, but
Too.
you could bring it there and play heads up.
Oh, yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
Mel and I are like, go to the. I can't. But
Because
and also,
otherwise I'm
like,
terrible. I'll just look at it, but I'll if it's there, I'll look
I know,
at
me
it.
too.
That's amazing.
Okay.
I want to thank, if you want to add something, please.
Sorry, but I was just gonna say, like, I just a little like note to Ali Wong, who I wish was here, and just like congrats on her.
Yeah.
She's
Love you, Allie.
extraordinary.
Here.
And
Love you.
and I think like all of us would say the same thing, like this particular nomination from this particular our union means, doesn't it mean like I was so moved because it's by like the people I love most in the world are actors. Like I just love staring into another actor's eyeballs, and
It's a great pleasure of our life.
truly, it's like where we find our characters are with, you have to find it with the other person. It's not a vacuum. And also like, I know how that careers are it is like you were saying, Brie, it's like you never know like when or how or what it's going to look like. If you love, you just never know. It's such a crapshoot. And like, nothing really happened for me until I was a mom. Like, so it can come at like any weird time. And it just, if you love it fiercely and dearly, it can just look a million different ways. Doesn't have to look one way or be one way. It's just, if you love it, it will give you that same pleasure like that we're talking about, because it really is like the most sacred space. Anyway, just I am in awe of all of
Me too.
Adore
Thank you. These characters, they're all such badass women. I love it so much. I want to thank you so much for being here and sharing your time and craft with your fellow actors. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
I'm so grateful for this
It was
time.
so
I
fun.
loved it.
all you people.
Thank you for having
Okay,
us.
I'll see you guys in person, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.